One September morning, Giovanni Drogo, being newly commissioned, set out from the city for Fort Bastiani. It was his first posting. He had himself called while it was still dark and for the first time put on his lieutenant's uniform. When he had done, he looked at himself in the mirror by the light of an oil lamp, but failed to find there the expected joy. There was a great silence in the house, but from a neighbouring room low voices could be heard. His mother was rising to bid him farewell. So the Tartar Steppe was written by Dino Buzzati in 1940. Buzzati was a journalist first and foremost, and I can't remember the name of the company, but he remained with them. Once he graduated at 22, he remained with the company for the rest of his life, which is crazy to me. And he did all kinds of journalism within that. I won't say too much here, but you can really tell from the book how journalism writing has informed how he writes books such as this. A quick summary of this book. It's about a young man called Giovanni Drogo, who not only has a really cool name, but he's an outpost who's been stationed at Fort Bastiani, which is this really desolate and remote fort that is drenched in historical intrigue and this kind of half myth that the Tartars may attack at any point, although they haven't attacked in the last 100 or so years. And it seems that everyone around in the fort has been there their whole lives almost, or never really seems to leave. And Drogo enters and he's kind of not sure about the whole thing. He thinks it's very lonely and he thinks, okay, I'm gonna go, this is a bit weird and boring. But we kind of realise over the course of the book it's not as easy to leave as he initially thinks it will be. Okay, now we're into the thoughts and reflections segment of this video. I'll just come off the bat and say I love this book. I thought it was so good. I'm normally not a super big fan of books when nothing really happens, and it can easily become very boring and dry and stale. But as I say, I think Buzzati, because he has this kind of journalistic approach to his writing, it keeps it very snappy, and there's parts in this book where it does kind of feel dreamy and fantasy-esque, but it's never written in a way where it's like, it feels silly, you know. It's always like very matter of fact in a way that makes you think, oh, this actually is happening as he writes it's happening. Kind of similar to Marquez in 100 Years of Solitude. I think that's also quite matter of fact as well, like this. And yeah, it just adds a lot of realism to something that doesn't always seem real, which helps ground it in humanity and the real world a lot. And it never makes you feel that you're flying off somewhere or it's getting too absurd or anything like that. And I think, yeah, Buzzati really captures atmosphere excellently, and I think that kind of is the driving force of this novel. It's not so much the plot points or even the characters per se, but it's this kind of sense of foreboding that he creates that really sucks you into the atmosphere, and the way he describes things and how the mists look and just the weird, like, they'll hear weird sounds that sound like the wind sounding like voices or water sounding like voices, things like this, where you think there's a mystery there and you're never quite sure what's going to happen next, but you're just so gripped because you want to find out if anything does happen. Yeah, I can really see this book, as someone who loves films, watches a lot of films, I can really see this book almost as an art house movie where like you can almost see beautiful shots, even though it's a book. I don't know how to describe it. Usually when you read a book, right, you come up with the imagery, or like you can come up with characters or scenes, but it's very rarely I read a book and I can actually see like a movie or like a beautiful shot of something. And I think it's a testament to how he describes the scenes and the things that are happening in here. and yeah, the beautiful descriptions. And to add on to the atmosphere kind of aspects of the book, I think Buzzati involves magical realism in a really, really organic way. It never feels like it's been forced in. It really feels like anyone who goes to a castle, and you kind of feel like the magic and the energy and the kind of ancestral, I don't know, power of a place. Even though like cognitively and logically you're like, oh, there's nothing actually here, you just kind of feel like there is magic around you. And that's kind of what Drogo feels when he goes to the castle, and he sees all these different rooms and he hears cool mysterious sounds and dripping noises and places and things like that. And yeah, it kind of, again, like the mystery element is kind of heightened by this looming fear of the Tartars that never really seem to come, but are always kind of there as like this MacGuffin of like, oh, maybe one day, or maybe today, or maybe in 5 years, or I see a bit of a movement there, or we see a horse there, or there's some people there, maybe it's them, it's not them. And the kind of myth of the Tartars themselves, you know, goes hand in hand with that, of this feeling of like something, or someone from an ancient civilization is going to come and something's going to happen, and it kind of feels like they're these spectres or ghosts of the past that everyone in the fort want to be alive, but I think like deep down they know it's not real, but they keep hanging on to this hope, as if it one day might happen. And again, it's like anything anyone experiences, where like, you know, you hope for, I don't know, a job to come through that you really want. So going to like the other themes of the novel, obviously it's about kind of this feeling of a life wasted, and a life waiting so much for something that might happen, that you've wasted time by waiting for that thing to happen. And you know, ultimately in this book it never actually happens. And it's just a very human like concept and idea. And it's one that I very much have fallen into myself, and most people have fallen into, where you become very passive and you're kind of sleepwalking through life, and you're not really living the life you want. You're living a life that's comfortable, or a life that's easy, because it's a bit painful to change. Yeah, and I think that's just a very human experience, and this book captures it so well in a very like, yeah, atmospheric way, where like the dull mundanity of life is itself a comfort. And you kind of read the book sometimes thinking, oh, Drogo, like, why are you doing this? Just leave. Like, you're kind of angry at him. But then you think, when you reflect it back to yourself, you're like, wait a sec, I do the exact same thing. Like, you know, I go to a job I don't really like, and it's not that I don't like it, but I don't really want to change it. A lot of people do, or like a hobby, or like a friendship or a relationship, you're just like, you're in it, but you're not invested in it, and you're just kind of, as I say, you're kind of sleepwalking through it. And I think, yeah, it's a very human feeling and struggle. And this captures it so excellently. Another thing that I like about this book is kind of this feeling of alienation as well. Like when he leaves his childhood home to go to the fort, and then he stays at the fort for a while, and then he goes back to his childhood home, he feels like this really big disconnect, and all the things that he recognised from his youth have kind of gone and vanished, and that feeling of nostalgia for a place that you thought you knew so well changes, because the place you go back to that you thought you remembered is not actually the same as your memory, which kind of proves how memories and nostalgia really fog your vision up and make you see things in a completely different way to how they actually are or were. And I think that's really interesting in this book, because, you know, he talks about how his mother used to wait for him to come back home and then only sleep when he was back, but then when he comes back she can just fall asleep like anything. And just how, yeah, the changes of time and age and things have such an effect on the life he thought he left behind and could come back to. Well, actually you can't come back to it, because that also changes. It's just an interesting, I think it's an interesting way of involving that in this book. and even with his friends like getting jobs and having kids, it's kind of like it's like oh, like the things that I thought would stay the same forever are changing, and I'm not really comfortable with that because it's not what I recognise. It's not like I can come back to that now. And it's almost like the life he's made for himself in the fort, that's his new sense of comfort and familiarity, even though that he doesn't really want to stay there. He says at the beginning, I don't want to stay there, but he's made it his home and now he doesn't want to leave. And I do kind of, now that I'm thinking about it, I do wonder if Buzzati kind of felt like that with his job, because he stayed there for his whole life. I don't know, maybe there's some kind of parallel there in his own life, but it was an interesting thought of how you find comfort in the things that you do every day, and even though you don't like those things, if you lost it, you would lose that sense of comfort, because change in itself is chaotic and scary, and yeah. I think it can be interpreted in different ways. I think that some people read this book and think, oh, it's a very depressing book because our main character Drogo like is very sad, and not very sad, but his life's very sad, and he doesn't really achieve the things he wanted to achieve, in the sense that he's not, you know, he sees all his friends when he goes back to see his mother having kids and things and careers, and he's not got any of that. And you could easily read it and say that's really sad and that's what's going to happen to me, but you could also see it as an impetus of change and think, oh, actually, you know, I don't want to end up like Drogo, I want to do something with my life. So I think it's an interesting book that can have different interpretations depending on how you read it, or even what kind of mindset you read it in. What's also quite interesting and kind of funny is that I read this book after I read Epitaph of a Small Winner, which I'll hopefully also do a video about. And yeah, it's funny that both of them kind of had this vibe of like going through life and having a lot of regrets and things that they wish they changed or not done. Yeah, so I just think it's an interesting parallel. And I was going to read another book like this. I was going to read The Book of Discret by Pessoa, but I started reading it and thought, you know what, I can't read 3 of these kind of books in a row, so I'm reading Hyperion now, and hopefully that will get a video soon as well. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say in this video. I'm not going to drag it on too much. Yeah, I liked all the characters. I mean, there's not many to talk about really apart from Drogo. There's kind of side characters in it, but I think Drogo's a very empathetic hero. And yeah, just a very generally excellent book. Seriously, probably one of my favourite books, just for the atmosphere alone. And how I can imagine such a, I don't know, atmospheric picture too. Yeah, really excellent book, really recommend it. Hopefully I have an Epitaph of a Small Winner review coming out sometime soon. And otherwise, take care of yourselves. Thanks for watching. Bye.